I Hate the News is the weekly news bulletin from I Hate Politics podcast, a show about a human activity we love to hate. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. It's July 15th, 2025. The DC Council is beset with several thorny budget issues, including funding the new RFK Stadium for the Washington Commanders, while cutting major education and environment funding. But budget deliberations this week included consideration of two citywide referendums overwhelmingly approved by voters. 2022's Initiative 82, which provided a path to equalize tipped minimum wages for restaurant workers and other similar lines of work with the regular minimum wage. And second, a 2024 referendum changing the city's voting system to ranked choice and opening primary elections to independent voters. The Westmore administration in Maryland looks at a different path with a buyout offer for state employees and personnel changes in the cabinet. A Howard County, Maryland Advisory Committee is recommending the county move to a system of school impact fees rather than hold back new housing projects until the school district's construction budget catches up, stirring up yet again the debate over where new construction should go. Stay with us.
I Hate Politics is brought to you by the Political Science Program at UMBC Shady Grove, where you'll learn a strong foundation in public policy, pre-law, and international affairs for an impactful career in a number of essential areas. Learn more at shadygrove.umbc.edu.
I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse and democratic societies. This means our politics are messy, dirty, sometimes corrupt, with often self-serving politicians. But no matter how much we may hate politics, we are never exempt from it, even when we refuse to participate. In fact, the purpose of politics is to keep society moving precisely when we don't agree with each other, like now. Music for this episode comes from CatScan, an art pop rock band from Washington, D.C. Paul Chaperas on bass, Kevin Kingsley on guitars and saxophone, and Mason Shelby on synths and percussion. The songs we use in this episode are instrumental versions of songs they wrote for their latest album, Everything is Normal. You can find where they are playing on their Facebook and Instagram pages. Among the many cities, towns, and suburban counties that make up the Washington metropolitan area, DC's annual budget season brings up the rear, the last of local bodies to pass the yearly budget, just in time for residents to empty out from the swampy humidity to the breezy beaches of the Atlantic Ocean. This year, the DC City Council has some big decisions to make, including a $1 billion commitment to the new RFK Stadium for the Washington Commanders, together with large cuts to education and environment spending. But the DC Council started this week with consideration of two referendums overwhelmingly approved by DC residents. The first referendum is from 2022. It's called Initiative 82, and it sought to equalize the minimum wage for workers who receive tips, such as restaurant and service workers, with the regular minimum wage. Tipped workers have a legally lower minimum wage in the belief that tips make up the rest. Restaurant workers, especially those in the back of the house or in smaller establishments, would be stuck with low wages, and there has been a long-running campaign to equalize the minimum wage law for tipped and non-tipped workers. But restaurant owners have objected to the increase in costs. There's a debate over how much costs have actually increased, since restaurant owners are also supposed to make up the difference between minimum wage and actual earnings anyway. The lobbying by restaurant owners brought a temporary pause to Initiative 82, and the slated increase in the tipped minimum wage that was to happen July 1st was met with a provision in the larger Budget Support Act proposed by Councilmember Brooke Pinto, which sought to preserve the differentiated system of tipped and non-tipped minimum wage and to hold tipped minimum wage to $8 an hour, and further introduce the idea of a super minimum wage of $20 an hour. For reference, the regular minimum wage is $17.50 in Washington, D.C. Pinto's proposal also sought to cap restaurant service fees to 10%. Councilmember Janice Lewis-George introduced an amendment to the budget bill that would remove these provisions and allow tipped minimum wages to increase. That last amendment passed on Monday, July 14th by a council vote of 7-5. For now, the increase in tipped minimum wage can proceed. The council also considered upturning a 2024 referendum called Initiative 83, which sought to change the way that the city holds elections, introducing ranked choice voting and opening primary elections to independent voters. Ranked choice voting is having its moment, with Zohran Mamdani defeating Andrew Cuomo in New York City's mayoral Democratic primary. Ranked choice voting allows voters to rank order candidates running for an office instead of having to choose just one. The candidates with the fewest first-rank votes are then eliminated and their votes reallocated to their second-choice candidates. The process is repeated until the last two candidates are left and the winner takes the race at that time. This type of election is believed to better reflect the preferences of voters. If a voter's first-choice candidate loses, they still have some input in the eventual winner. It is also believed to make elections less contentious, as candidates vie not just for first-choice voters, but also second- and third-choice voters. The DC Council voted to fund ranked choice voting elections in the city, but did not vote to open primary elections to registered independents. To become law, a second vote will have to be won. The state of Maryland has been under significant fiscal pressure as a result of federal budget cuts and worker layoffs. In response, state leaders have been weighing their responses. One of them, announced last week by the Moore administration, is a buyout plan for state employees, which follows 2 years of trying to fill vacant positions across state agencies, which was said to be hurting services available to state residents. The Moore administration has also seen personnel turnover at the cabinet level, most recently of Transportation Secretary Paul Wiedefeld. Brian Sears is a reporter for the news website Maryland Matters, covering state politics.
We just came out of a pretty contentious budget year where they had to make some pretty dramatic moves to solve a $3.3 billion structural deficit. They had to come up with $121 million of ongoing general fund budget cuts. What we really came out with was hiring freezes and voluntary buyouts. We now know that that plan includes a flat $20,000 payment plus $300 a year for each year of service, 6 months of health care going away. And they started offering that last week. So we're now we're in this waiting period to see who seeks a buyout and how many are accepted. We just don't at this point know what that target is beyond the $121 million they're trying to hit. I've done the math on this. If you just wanted to do it by laying off positions, and you decided that each employee that you were eliminating was roughly $100,000, at that point you're looking at roughly 1,200 employees. There are a tremendous number of restrictions on who can take the buyout. So, for example, you're not eligible for the buyout if you have 2 years, or I think if you have less than 2 years of service. You can't take the buyout if you have already applied for retirement.
The big problem with buyouts is that if it's attractive enough, your best talent will take it and leave. If it's not attractive enough, nobody will leave. And striking the balance is difficult.
There are nearly 52,000 positions within state government. That is the combination between the executive branch, the state personnel system, and the Maryland Department of Transportation. 4,800 of those are vacant as of May. And there are another 13,500 in job classifications that are exempt from the buyout. That shrinks your pool considerably. And, what we don't sort of know immediately is how many people are in the remaining positions, which, pencil out to 30,000.
If you've spent 20 years in state government, you get $6,000 plus $20,000 plus 6 months of health care. It's 22 years to get state retiree health care. How is this attractive?
That is something that was raised to me last week when the details of this came out.
Have you talked to any of the unions?
I had some brief conversations with AFSCME, and their default position on this is they like this option better than layoffs. And so they like this better. I don't think anybody is convinced that this is the balance, but we'll see.
Third year of any administration, there are people moving in and out. What is the impact of that?
Since January, 5 cabinet secretaries, including most recently Paul Wiedefeld, who's announced that he'll leave the state by the end of the month. There's some discussion about other cabinet secretaries. Some of it really is very normal when you're in any administration, usually around that second or third year, there's burnout. Paul Wiedefeld said to me last week, turned 70 in August. I think a lot of us are watching now to see whether or not it rises to a level that sort of exceeds that, because there's a lot of chatter. It'll make things interesting if you're also doing personnel searches at the same time that you're gearing up your reelection campaign.
The governor has hung his hat on economic development, but now those goals seem to be a little bit far off.
I think the thing that you have to be the most concerned about is what happens, especially in September, with the ongoing federal government situation and the fact that the courts are starting to clear the way for eliminating position. We may start to see some of those folks start landing on the state's unemployment rolls. There's real concerns about the solvency of the state's unemployment trust fund right now. We're sitting at 3.2% unemployment, which is below the historical almost 5% unemployment that we've seen over 30 years. Those are numbers that came out of the Department of Labor last week.
There are reports from the comptroller's office, and she has said this herself, that there are 3 jobs in Maryland for every 1 worker available.
There can be some absorption. But again, it depends on what employees and what jobs. The governor is looking at cherry picking some of the federal government employees and in some cases would like to retrain some of these employees to fill teacher positions.
That was announced now 2 months ago.
In terms of teacher training at this stage, I don't know that it is necessarily happening on any large scale.
How does all this complicate Governor Moore's re-election prospects?
I think some of this might depend on who gets involved in the race. There is a lot of talk about whether or not Larry Hogan gets into this race.
That's right.
If he wants to go back to the 2014 playbook and make this a pocketbook election. The last 2 years, there's been the taxes and fees that have been raised. If the economy really takes a turn, I think that accrues to the benefit of Larry Hogan.
Is Governor Moore inviting Larry Hogan to run?
When I talk to people in Larry land, they really try to talk it down.
Do you have a sense of when they might have the fall session in the assembly now?
If you and I were having this conversation in April, I would have told you there was a 90% chance we were coming back in September or October. I think as it stands now, I would say the odds are less than 50-50 that we're going to see a session as it stands today.
What has changed? Is it the fact that the downside of federal layoffs have not been that dramatic?
I think the worst case scenarios have not set up. And at this stage, there are tools in place that would allow for adjustments to be made without coming back into special session and that the legislature could come back in January. The governor has a tremendous amount of budgetary discretion in his own through the Board of Public Works. Up to 20-25% of the budget can be cut through the Board of Public Works without General Assembly approval. There's no warnings to the members about when to start setting aside time on a calendar. Those conversations are not happening yet.
You heard it here first. Brian Sears, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Worth noting, the general expectation that there will be a fall session of the General Assembly this year appears to be shifting. And all eyes are now on former Governor Larry Hogan. Will he or won't he? The Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance is a local government mechanism to balance infrastructure and real estate development. The APFO, as it is called, covers sewer and water, traffic, and most importantly, schools. Developers understand well that they will have to pay for the upgrade of some public infrastructure to see their projects to fruition. They have to put in sewer and water lines and tie them to the main pipes. They also now recognize the need for some road building, including adding things like traffic signals, bike paths, and roundabouts as necessary. So the APFO in the last decade or two has become primarily about schools. Do schools in the construction area have the capacity to accommodate new students that will live in the new homes? Since the school board decides where to build schools and where to add new capacity, development projects would get held up until the school board found the money to expand schools or build new ones, and sometimes this would be for several years. Many jurisdictions, including Montgomery County, Maryland, have moved from building bans to a fee-based approach, where a developer pays for the impact from their project on schools, especially when they are overcrowded. Todd Arterburn is a member of Howard County's task force considering changes to the county's APFO rules. He is also a almost retired developer.
Well, we were tasked with reviewing Howard County's APFO pursuant to the passage of the new general plan. The master plan is redone every decade. Those plans really identified where the county saw opportunities for continued housing growth. They identified a number of activity centers in the county. In many cases, it would be knock down and rebuild a lot of older facilities in some of the village centers, say in Columbia. And other areas are called TODs, or transit-oriented development, where there are forms of public transportation that are available. The old APFO was built under the assumption that we're a very rapidly growing county. And the primary focus of the old APFO was to identify, especially where schools were overcrowded, and to delay the addition of new housing in those areas. The theory being that it gives the opportunity for the school system to adjust where it places its students. And the new APFO takes a little different course. The primary one is changing the focus from a delay-related system, which is the current system, to a fee-generating system, which would give the school system specific revenue sources to address those areas where there is still overcrowding. Now, what's interesting is that while we've been going through this process, the new school capacity chart has been proposed by the Board of Education and passed by the council. The number of schools that are defined as overcrowded has gone from 24 to 12 in just 1 year, which says a lot about what's happening with the demographics in the county and enrollment in the schools. The school system enrollment peaked in 2019. And since then, it's fallen about 1,500 students. And the projections from the Office of School Planning are for that enrollment to continue on a slow glide path downward. The county school system now has more seats available than students enrolled at every level of education. And that's unprecedented. And under the new school capacity charts that have been passed, that's expected to fall to 95% utilization over the next 7 or 8 years. Only 30% of Howard County households have children in the public schools, and which is shocking to most people. And even more striking is that only 27% of new home buyers in Howard County have children that go to the public schools. So that 30 is actually trending downward just by virtue of the fact that incoming households are at an even lower rate than the existing 30%.
Are you concerned at some broad level that Howard County demographics is headed in this direction?
I'm definitely concerned with respect to county finances. The U.S. Census Bureau demographic projections for the county have the only age demographic that's growing at all in the county is the retired community. The 25 or 30,000 additional residents in the county over the next 15 or 20 years will all be in that retiree age demographic. That just changes the focus of what Howard County has been for the last 40 years, which is a school-driven economy with younger families, working age parents, and so forth.
What is the median value of a home in Howard County these days?
I want to say in the 650 range. Single family new housing is all over $1 million now. That's a big ask for a young family with young children. Our housing growth rate has declined and we're well under 1% now per year, which many economists would say that's stall speed. We're not adding housing in significant enough numbers to provide the housing that's required by the new workforce that we hope to develop in Howard County. Almost all new housing, and it's actually envisioned by the master plan, will be what they call workforce housing or more affordable housing.
How are you trying to fix it?
We're proposing to move from a delay-based system in APFO to a fee-based system. A year ago, 24, a year before that, even more, a year before that, even more. Schools that were deemed to be overcrowded and then subject to APFO-related delays that could add, and usually did add, 4 years of time to any sort of housing project.
But now, with overcrowding declining, it shouldn't matter, right? I mean, the project should be able to go ahead faster as a consequence of the reduction in overcrowding.
Yes, and I think had this happened 6 months ago, when we were really focusing on what we're trying to accomplish with the committee, I think the development community may well have just wanted to leave the system alone and let it die a natural death, because we're rapidly moving toward fewer and fewer schools being closed, which means that fewer projects would be subject to the delay.
Speak to the fee structure that you're proposing now.
It's a 3-tier system. Any school, whether it's elementary, middle, or high school, at 105 would pay a tier 1 SOUP charge, utilization premium charge. Any school, elementary, middle, or high, over 110 would pay a tier 2 charge, and anything over 115 would pay a tier 3 charge. And those 3 tiers at those 3 levels could add to as much as 120% to the base school surcharge that's levied on all new development, all new construction in Howard County.
What does that work out to?
The current school surcharge is $8.15, and it's indexed to inflation. So every year that $8.15 goes up, and it'll continue to rise. Our school overcrowding utilization premium uses that school surcharge as the basis upon which the additional percentage is calculated. If all 3 schools are at tier 3, it's a 120% increase. At the current $8.15, it would be 120% of $8.15. That would be the SOUP. The 2 of them together come out to like $17.50 or $17.80, something like that. But as the school surcharge moves up, as a result of the inflation linkage, then the utilization premium percentage stays the same, but obviously the dollar amount moves up.
That works out for a 2,000 square feet home to $34,000.
The overwhelming majority of new housing in the county is going to be single family attached and multifamily. You don't have 2,000 square foot units in most of those cases. They're going to be considerably smaller.
Townhouses are how many square feet?
In the 1,500 to 1,800 square foot range.
$30,000. The tension here is that you want housing affordability in Howard County, and you are increasing impact fees. How do you balance that?
It's a tough balancing act. The school surcharge for affordable housing is already discounted, so they don't pay $8.15. They pay like $3 a square foot. Seniors even less. If the base rate is $3 and the SOUP is 120%, it goes to $7, not 18 or 17. The calculus of the committee was the development community will be willing to pay more in fees in exchange for an elimination of a 4-year wait.
But there is no 4-year wait.
We don't know exactly how the development community will react. What is the level of additional fees they're willing to pay in exchange for no? We don't really know. We're just making a kind of a best educated guess on where we think those sensitivities might be within the development community. The challenge is that the master plan and the county in the county's vision in the master plan calls for the addition of 1,500 or 1,600 new housing units per year. And in fact, the projections we have are that there's demand for 30,000 additional units in the next decade. But as under the current system, we're only delivering 700 units per year. So there's a vast imbalance right now. And the thinking is that if the time delay is reduced or eliminated, additional fees will still enable projects to go forward because the reduction in the time delay.
What are the next steps?
We would be hoping to vote and finalize our report on July 30th. At that point, our report goes to the council, and then the council does what the council does. It's nothing but an advisory group.
Todd Arterburn, thank you.
You're welcome.
We end today with 2 short notices about Montgomery County, Maryland. Councilmember Evan Glass, who is a candidate for county executive, sent out an announcement that former Congressman David Trone is endorsing him, as is former Clinton Labor Secretary and one-time Maryland gubernatorial candidate Tom Perez. The endorsement is noteworthy because Councilmember Andrew Friedson, who is also running for county executive, worked on David Trone's first congressional campaign, and both Friedson and Trone are believed to be business-friendly. Glass is on the public financing program, which limits individual contributions, but Trone might have neutralized Friedson's current fundraising advantage. This week, Glass, Friedson, and their other 9 colleagues on the Montgomery County Council will consider legislation to treat laid-off federal workers preferentially in county recruitment. Unclear if the school system will follow suit, but that is where the jobs are. That's all for this episode. Be sure to check out our feature interview series that come out Friday mornings. I Hate Politics is produced by me, Sunil Dasgupta, with support from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I direct UMBC's political science program at the universities at Shady Grove in Montgomery County, where, among other things, we explore and learn about politics, government, and society close to home. Music for this episode comes from CatScan, an art pop rock band from Washington, D.C. Paul Chaperas on bass, Kevin Kingsley on guitars and saxophone, and Mason Shelby on synthesizers and percussion. The songs we use in this episode are instrumental versions of songs they wrote for their latest album, Everything is Normal. You can find out where they are playing on their Facebook and Instagram pages. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you'll subscribe and share the podcast as we bring you stories about politics close to you at your home. See you next time.